Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Purple Conversations. So I've been having the discussion with again different men, different women, and just with myself and God, talking about the relationship and the meaning of marriage and what's the point, and all this misconception that's going around about the male female dynamic and who's to submit to who and who's to be subservient to who and all this crap. And I'm like, Lord, where did disconnect happen? Of course, obviously, the enemy is in the mix of everything, trying to complicate, twist, pervert anything that is of God. He's not a creator, he's an imitator. So he has taken the institution of marriage, and now all of a sudden it's just about a paper, and men are supposed to be head of the wife, thinking that that means ruler, thinking that that means dominant, thinking that that means I get to now treat you like you're less than because you're beneath me. So I decided, let's do my own research on it and go into the word and see what God really says about the institution of marriage and what are the roles and the positions for us as husbands and wives. So this is in Ephesians 5 verse 7. So I'm going to read it. It's Ephesians 5 and verse 21 through to 33. All right, here we go. Submit one to another out of reverence for Christ. Now, first of all, before you even go anywhere, before you even go any further, we're submitting to each other because we both respect Christ, because we both understand and realize the power that we are both submitting to, which is Jesus Christ. And because we both respect Jesus Christ, because we both value Jesus Christ, because we both submitted our lives to Jesus Christ, then we submit to each other. That's the first thing. So before we even go any further, the reason we're doing this, the reason we're going into marriage, the reason we're doing this, we're getting involved in the first place, is because we have respect for Christ, because we both submit to his lordship. He's both Lord of our lives individually, and because we're coming together, we're submitting to each other out of respect for him. That's the first thing. Then it says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husband. To what? Your own husband. Not a man that is attempting to be your husband, not a man that is pursuing you, not a man that is interested in you, not a man that you're dating. Your own husband. So I do not need to submit to you until one, you are first submitted to Christ. I have made the decision for us to be submitted to each other because we're now going to get married, and I don't need to submit until we're married, because until we're married, you're not my husband. You might be cosplaying as my husband, but until we have a ring on this and we've made a covenant before Jesus Christ, you're not my husband. So I'm not entitled to submit to you. I'm not entitled to do anything that I see you're doing until we make that commitment. And that needs to happen because I need to see you first present yourself as somebody worthy of being submitted to. That's two. So submit yourself to your own husband. Own, your own, not any rando. Okay? Okay. 4, the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands. Now, before we go any further, it says that now as the church submits to Christ. What does that mean? The church follows everything Christ says. The church follows the principles, the precepts, the laws, the author, everything that is, he's submitted to. The church is submitted to Jesus Christ. If your husband is not submitted to Jesus Christ, he's not worthy of being submitted to. Okay? Because it says, it's giving us the order. The only reason I need to submit is because we are both submitted to Jesus Christ. The only reason I need to submit is because you're my own husband. You're my husband after we've made this commitment. How do you qualify to become my husband? Because you operate as Christ, which means you're self-sacrificial, which means you're selfless, before I give you my own words, let's give you what the Bible says. Okay. It says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Now I always looked at this when it specifies, because it specifies to the husband. It goes through a whole long thing. We're going to read through it, but it goes through, let's start from here. So husbands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 verses. So from verse 25 to verse 33, it is specifying how the husband is supposed to love his wife. It's specifying how the husband is supposed to show up to be worthy of even being submitted to by his wife, because the man is supposed to be the representative in the marriage of Christ to the church. What did Christ do for his church? That man died. He died to himself. He died to his own will, because he was in the garden saying, God, if there's any other way, take this from me, but not my will, but your will be done. So if your desire is to be a husband and your heart posture is not one of ready to die to self, leave the people them girl pitney alone. Stay by yourself. Right? If you're not prepared to go into marriage with the heart posture of, Lord, help me die to myself so I can be sacrificial to my marriage and to my wife, you're not ready to be a husband. Okay, let's read what it says. It says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing of the water through the word. So if you don't know your Bible, if you do not know the word, you cannot wash your wife with the word. You cannot wash your own spirit with the word. You cannot pour into your wife. So before you even think of getting married, if you're not submitted to God, if you're not studied in your word, if you're not ready to die to yourself, you should, first of all, ain't nobody should be submitting to you. And you should not be thinking of even being a husband, because you're not ready to be a husband. Okay, let's keep going. And present her to himself as a radiant church, without stains or wrinkles or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. All of that comes from how you wash your wife, how you pour into your wife. All of that comes from you, the man who wants to be leader, head. It starts with you. So if you're not submitted to God, if you're not studied in your word, if you're not ready to die to yourself, you're not ready to be a husband, because then you cannot pour from a pure place, and you cannot present this woman to you and to yourself as radiant and beautiful, because if she's stressed out and not being able to be her full self, there's no way she's going to be able to present herself that way. There's no way she can be that way unless you are first doing the things you need to do as a husband. Let's keep going. Now remember, this is all still talking to the husband. We're not talking to the wives yet. Okay, let's just keep going. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. That's pretty self-explanatory. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they fed and cared for their own body, just as Christ does for the church. For we are members of his body. For this is the reason a man is to leave his father and mother and to be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery. Now, all that I just read is just directed at the husband. And anytime we hear people mention this topic, all we hear is, wives, submit to your husband. And then we ignore. Then it is ignored. Everything else is ignored that is required for you to even be worthy of submission. Now it comes down to the wife. It says, however, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. That's all it says. It says the two instructions the wife gets: submit to your husband as Christ submit, as we submit to the church, and to respect your husbands. 2 instructions. While there's 6 verses dedicated to what the husband is supposed to do. So why is the conversation always surrounding a submissive wife without first identifying a man worthy of being submitted to? Why is the conversation always women should do this, women should do that, women should do this, before asking and training and teaching and wanting to become a man worthy of being submitted to? Now there's another part, Proverbs 18:22, that says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. So when you find a wife, you get an added bonus. When you make someone your wife, you get an added bonus because you now get favor. You now get access to doors you would not have had if you weren't attached to this woman. How do we know that God is a girl dad? Let's go back to Genesis and why all of these things are attached to the woman. We always read the story of Genesis where Eve was deceived by the serpent, and everybody wants to blame Eve. I went back and I looked at the chronological order of how the punishment was dispensed. Now, first, it says Eve ate the apple, nothing happened. Then she gave it to her husband, who was with her. Okay, he was with her, saw what was happening, still took the apple, the fruit, still took the fruit and ate it. That's when everything went chaotic, because the word was given to Adam. Adam should have been washing himself with the word, which he was, because he was walking with God every day in the cool of the garden. Still stood there and watched the serpent deceive his wife and said nothing, and then partook in the deception. Then God came and said, Adam, where are you? He never said, Adam and Eve, where you at? He said, Adam, where are you? Adam said, we hid because we were naked. And God is like, hold on. Who told you you were naked? What does Adam do? Adam said, his wife that you gave me. Homeboy gonna blame God that you gave me his wife, and the wife that you gave me. Again, not taking any responsibility, passing on the blame. And then Eve does the same thing. She's like, but it's the serpent. The serpent deceived me. Okay, so 3 steps. Adam blames God and Eve. Eve blames the serpent. God addresses the serpent first, because the serpent was the one who deceived Eve. Girl dad, he addressed who deceived his daughter first. Then he dispensed the punishment to the serpent. Then he dispensed the curse to Eve. Then he dispensed the curse to Adam. And what was the curse that Eve had to get? Apart from painful childbirth, she was also now having to desire her husband. So the curse is to have desire for a man who is now going to feel like he has authority over me. Not one time does the Bible ever direct the woman to love her husband or love a man, because that's nature. That's our nature, to be nurturers and nourishers and pour into. It always asks us to respect our men, and it tells the men to love, because loving, being selfless, being a servant doesn't come naturally. That's why it's a command. That's why it's a directive. That's why it's something that men have to dig deep for and need help with. And I'm not coming for you, men. I'm trying to empower you, because I want us to understand, if we get this thing right, and we can shut up the voice of the enemy, if we get this thing right and we can start pouring into each other from a healthy place, and not speaking and feeding all this toxic energy that you're supposed to be my peace and you're supposed to be this and all this crap. We both have positions to play. We both have things at the Lord, but the onus starts with the men. 6 verses of things that just to be even qualified to be a husband worthy of being submitted to. Several different things that you have to do to even be considered, before you even consider being a husband, before you even consider going into somebody's life, before you even consider taking on a wife. You have to already be submitted to God. You have to be in a place where you're studying your word. So that because you're the priest of your home, you're the first line of defense. That's what Jesus did for the church. That's what Jesus did for his bride. And he's now equated the value of marriage, the same thing that Jesus did for his bride. And we're taking it lightly. We think it's just paperwork, and we think it's just to have convenient sex, and we think it's just to have children. It's so much deeper than that. And if we're not understanding and putting the correct things in order, if we're not becoming the persons that we need to become before we even want to take on, and then we wonder, you haven't prepared for it. Then you go into the ring and you're confused why you're losing. Because you've already gone in there with the wrong mindset. You've already gone in there with thinking, what can I get? And not realizing that in order to be a husband, I first have to submit to God. I first have to be studying my word. I first have to be working on my character. I have to be working on willing to be selfless and not self-serving. To be willing to be a servant. To see how I can die to myself, to die to my flesh, die to my own will and my desire. Because that's what Christ did for the church. And though the suffering before him was great, he still did it with a heart of joy, because he said, though I'm doing this for the joy that's set before me. Are you going into marriage with that mindset? Are you thinking of becoming a husband with that mindset? Already prepared to die to self, already prepared to take on the weight and the mantle of what that comes with? I want to see that. I want to see a group of men. I want to see, and I'm seeing it, I won't even lie, but I'm also seeing where some persons just don't get it. They don't get it, and then when they're in it, they're confused why it's not working. And it's not working because you went in with the wrong mindset. And it's not, you have the wrong mindset because it wasn't taught to you. Because unfortunately, even in these churches, even in the men that are out there, the rhetoric is to be considered a man, you must be sleeping with these holy women. To be considered a man, you must be able to learn how to con women, or you must learn how. There's all this misinformation and misandry and misogynistic behavior and toxic mindsets that's being passed down as manhood. It's not just about your money. It's not just about the things you achieve. It's not just about how many women you can sleep with. That's not what makes you a man. What is the word telling you? That it's a character, it's a heart issue. You first have to be submitted to God. You have to be submitted. What that mean? It means you've given Jesus Christ the authority to tell you what to do. You've given Jesus Christ the authority to be subjected, to be submitted to his word, to his rule book, to his guidebook. First, believe who God says you are, and then that's how you walk out your life, and then you can treat people from that place. You can treat yourself from that place, because it also says you have to love yourself first, because how you treat yourself, think about yourself, is how you're then going to treat your wife. So if you don't love yourself, if you're not pouring into yourself, you're not feeding and nourishing yourself, you're not doing anything, you're not taking from the source and going to the source so that he can pour into you, you're not going to be able to do that with your wife. Because the order is out of line. Because if you're only thinking it's from yourself and she's just coming to give, and I'm here to take, then you're already out of line. Because Jesus was the ultimate, and he came and he was a servant. He served. He walked with 12 men and he washed their feet before he was on his way to die. So if your mindset is not prepared to die to self, if your mindset is not prepared to be submitted to God, if your mindset is not prepared to study your word and be in your word and become the character, the type of man that can take on the suffering and count it all joy, you're not ready to be a husband. Leave these women alone. And women, if you're not prepared to, also you should, because it says we are submitting because we respect God. So you should also be in relationship with God, because then you can discern, then you can see, is this man really about that life, or is he just talking about that life? And we're not supposed to blindly submit just because you're male, or because I have feelings for you, because I like you. If you're not displaying these characteristics, if you're not displaying these things, if I don't see in you that your heart is first for God, then you can't possibly love me if you don't first love God, because then you can't love yourself if you don't first love God. And then if you can't love God, you don't love yourself, and you can't love me. Coming alongside you as your wife, I'm not your fixer, I'm not your savior, I'm your support. I'm here to pour into you. I'm here to also be washed, because I bring the favor. Me as your wife, just by nature of being your wife, I bring favor to your life. The graces and the doors that you're going to get open for you. Go and check the statistics. All the millionaires and all these people who are exceptionally rich and doing well in all their different fields, they have a wife. And the minute this, and the Bible tells you, if you don't treat your wife well, don't even pray, because I'm not gonna hear you. If you're not treating your wife well, don't even come to me, because how am I gonna give you my gift? Because Eve was a gift. God took his time to present her, build her, form her, fashion her, and then he presented her to Adam. She was a gift. Your wife is a gift. The woman you're pursuing, that you see all these qualities that you want. If the qualities you're looking for is somebody who is weak-minded and spirit, because you want somebody to manipulate, first of all, you're already in the wrong vein. A wife is supposed to come and tug on you. She's supposed to come and pour into you. She's supposed to come and build you and call you to your higher self. If you're not ready to do that, you're not ready to be a husband. If you're not ready to appreciate the gifts that God has given her, the spirit of discernment, the spirit of nurturing and all those things, and her softness, just by nature of the softness of who she is, and you're not willing to pour and wash over her with the word and heal the parts of her that was broken, if that's not your idea of marriage, you're not ready to be married. If that's not your idea of who you are supposed to be as a husband and who she's supposed to be to you as a wife, you're not ready to be married. If you're not willing to break yourself, break your own flesh to condition yourself to stay pure, and condition yourself to train your body to wait. Because even if you started off wrong, don't mean you have to stay wrong. But there's ways to correct that. Put plans in place, put things in place to change those things. Practice abstinence and celibacy and all the things. Train your body, put your body under the subjection. And that's for the women too. But I'm talking to you, my lovely men, right now. Because we want to get this thing right. And the way to get it right is when you guys get it right. Because God puts the onus on you, not we. We're not the ones holding you to the standards. We're not the ones that... And it is in us to call that out of you, because that's where our part comes in. We're supposed to be looking for the Christ in you. And if we don't see it, then it's in us to call it out of you, because that's what our natures are supposed to connect to. So that's why it feels like what you guys call nagging and what you guys call this, that, and the third. And she just talk too much, and she keep talking, and she and too much expectations. And it's because she's calling to the higher person in you, which is supposed to be your Christ, your connection to Christ. And if you're not prepared to do that, if you're not prepared to put in the work, if you're not prepared to grow, if you're not prepared to look at yourself, because if you don't first love yourself, you can't love her. If you're not prepared to do those things, you're not prepared to be a husband. So leave these women alone. If you're not prepared as a woman to first go to God so that he can tell you who you are, then you can know how to identify the husband, because you know the characters you're looking for, you know the evidence that you're looking for, and then know to work on yourself to know how to call it out of him without coming at him, without attacking him, but pouring into him. I know we get frustrated and we have to celebrate them for every little thing, because it's like you're expected to do that. Like, why do I have to cheer you on for every single thing? But they need that. So it don't take anything out of us to do that when we see that you're also putting in the work. When it gets draining is when you're not putting in the work but still expecting to be praised. Not gonna work. But I love you. I have faith in you. I know it's gonna happen. Have a wonderful day. You are seen, fully known, fully seen, fully known, fully loved. Have a wonderful day.